Okay. This is the book. My Name is Leon by Kit DeWalt. And as you can see, it's got bright orangey red writing, and there's also a symbol. You've got the symbol of a plant, which could either be the Scarlet Emperor, which is mentioned in the book, or could represent peas, a pea pod, because there's two little heads, a black one for Leon and a white one for Jake. This represents two peas in a pod. The chapter titles are also symbols. As you go through, there are different symbols for each chapter. Like the first chapter is a cigarette. This actually figures really strongly and is insignificant. It is very significant in the chapter. She also turns them into motifs because they carry on throughout the book, like the cigarettes, like the bike for chapter 16. But in the first 11 chapters, DeWalt confronts some issues of neglect, race and the care system. The main protagonist and whose point of view the book is written is Leon. He's 8 3/4, boy of mixed race. The way DeWalt uses close third person to express his views and thoughts makes it easy to read, but also gives the reader a child's perspective of the issues, because they can be upsetting topics. But due to DeWalt's background in social services and having written training manuals for them, it has given her an insight into how it works and what it's really like. Plus having adoptive children and her mum being a foster carer, this has influenced how she's written it from Leon's point of view, the anxiety he feels and how he feels it's his fault because he doesn't fully understand the situation. But as a reader, you do. You know about this situation, which gives it a dramatic irony. And also, when DeWalt writes, she writes about the snippets of conversation. Because children are children, they listen at doors. They can hear anything from anywhere, to be fair. But when he overhears the social worker telling Maureen he's been a carer, baby and mother, she writes Maureen, who is a seasoned foster carer. She's got children of her own. Maureen also realises that the information she gets from the social workers might not be so true because they always talk around Leon. Like everybody in this book basically talks around him or tells him how to do things. Never ask how he is. Never ask what his circumstances. And I'll tell you more about that later. But she reassures Leon that he's doing good and that he's done good, because she asks him how he looked after Jake, what Jake's routine was. And I think that's an important step, and it's what DeWalt realises is an important step, that you ask the child about the situation and what they've actually done in that situation, because it puts them at ease and makes them feel like they haven't done anything wrong and they were okay in what they were doing. But Leon's mum, Carol, she was a child having a child. And also when DeWalt writes about her, especially in the beginning, she automatically assumes Leon knows how to do things and what to do, and thought he was safe in doing and in looking after Jake. But with Carol, it's like he calls her Carol, doesn't call her mum, because of the connotations of the word mean. You need to be responsible. And she wasn't ready for the responsibility. So I think that's done deliberately within the writing, that she's actually known as Carol, because she was a child having a child. But Maureen, in comparison, knows exactly how to treat a child. She makes sure he's well fed. She makes sure Leon's got no responsibility. She looks after Jake. And she also goes through with Leon what happens to Jake when Jake gets adopted, which is a tough time for all in the book, but it's written very sensitively. And she also writes about Maureen being admitted to hospital, which then Leon is then moved to her sister Sylvia's. Now, when this is done, DeWalt also brings in Leon's freedom in a way, in the shape of a bike. Now, she could have put him anywhere. A park with children his own age. There's no other children in this book. And it's very rare his school's mentioned. But she picks the allotments, which is where things are grown, nurtured, left to mature. And it also opens up for DeWalt 2 new characters in Mr. Devlin, who is white and Irish, and Tufty is a young black man. DeWalt has deliberately made them opposites. They bicker, they argue, they're the only male influences in Leon's life in the book. Because when DeWalt mentions Byron, Leon's dad, he's always in memory or in reflections. And when she writes about Mr. Devlin on page 90, she describes him like an old action man, holding a knife, cutting through the bush like a soldier in the jungle. It's deliberate because this is what Leon likes. This is what Leon's toys are. This is what his dreams are. Action men, army, knives, guns. And when she writes about Tufty, his young black father figure, but also when they're first introduced, Leon calls him the Wasp because of the glasses he wears and the fact that his head's all shiny and he's got shiny black skin. And even though they both teach Leon how to work in the allotments and what to do, they never actually ask what's going on, what's your life like, how are you doing. Nothing personal. It's just digging and planting seeds. Even though the book was written in 2016, it's set in the 1980s. There was racial tensions at the time, and due to the Sus Law, the police had the right to stop and search people, and the main people stopped were young black males. They were targeted because at the time there was a lot of racism, especially with the police force being white. And also with the police force, they did use brutality against the people they stopped and searched. DeWalt writes about a character called Castro, who's one of Tufty's friends. And he dies during the book, basically through police brutality. Even DeWalt had first-hand knowledge of this when she lived in Handsworth, because this is where the tensions were. And in her memoir, she said the Sus Laws are putting innocent black men behind bars and police brutality is the norm. And she included this into the book and into these scenes because after Castro dies, Tufty performs an ode to Castro, which is a poem in the book, which is called Metafiction, and it's a literary technique. But before he reads the poem, he's standing up, going from left to right like a boxer. He's on the balls of his feet, he's bouncing up and down. It gives it such emotion and intensifies that situation. And the first line of the poem is, I don't want to be a warrior. Like he's saying, I didn't choose my race or my colour. DeWalt then sets the scene for the final escalations. Leon runs away because he thinks Maureen doesn't want him, because Sylvia keeps talking about dogs and going to live by the sea and not with Leon anymore. But Leon also wants to get back to his brother. And this is where DeWalt writes about him going back to the allotments, seeing Tufty and Devlin, because the riot has just passed through the allotments. But when they see him, they ask him why he's there, and he thinks they're going to take him back to Maureen, or, you know what I mean, stop him from trying to get to Jake. So he basically picks up a knife and threatens them both. And then when he runs off, they don't know what to shout because they don't know his name. He's just Star. That's what Tufty nicknamed him, and that's how DeWalt wrote it. And they then end up in the middle of the riots, where the police catch holds of Tufty and Mr. Devlin, and there is violence within that scene, and there is a little bit of violence towards Leon because he's mixed race, and this is why the riots were probably placed, but DeWalt put them in the book because it was all to do with race. But after they get away from the riots, Leon then takes them back to the safety of Sylvia's, with Maureen there. And then she de-escalates the situation by them being all together, but also her taking Leon to see Carol for her to tell him the truth of everything, that she's not going to be there anymore, that he needs to stay with Maureen. And Maureen tells him that he has her home there. She's not in the slightest going to get rid of him. She don't want a dog and she don't want the beach. She wants to be with Leon. And that's the way DeWalt writes it in the book. Quite sharp and to the point. But she could have ended it there, but then she uses the royal wedding in 1980 of Charles and Diana to bring everybody together for a party in the street. And that's where the book finishes, and that's where I finish this vlog. Thank you for listening.